Shall we get going with the presentation? Masha, Dasha, you guys ready? It's
Yes.
over to you.
Thank you.
Trying to share my screen. Oh, yeah. Can you see it now? Oops. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Masha, and so with my friend Dasha today, we will be talking about our favorite fermented drink, kvass. We both grew up in a country like in Russia, where kvass was extremely popular, and we grew up drinking it. And after moving abroad, Dasha tried to recreate it at home, mostly out of curiosity and because she and I myself also missed the taste. And now we brew kvass ourselves, so we actively experiment with the recipes, and we have been thinking even about taking it beyond home brewing and trying small-scale production. So yeah, and today's talk will be split into two parts. I will briefly talk about the history of kvass, of how it was developed, and then Dasha will take over and tell more about the technology and how she's brewing it at home. Like we'll go deeper into practical insights, let's say so. So if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands, shout and ask them. We hope we can answer them. So we'll see. Okay. Important thing to highlight is that we are not presenting a particular recipe or one specific drink, but mostly wider Eastern European fermentation tradition, because kvass is also, oh, how can I, yeah. Kvass is more than just one drink. That's absolutely true. Kvass is not a single recipe or style. Historically, it referred to a wide range of fermented drinks and sometimes to fermentation itself. It can be a bit misleading because if you have ever tried kvass, you probably remember its signature flavor. So usually it's a bread-based, slightly sweet drink. This flavor is very common today, especially in like store-bought kvass. Modern commercial versions look very similar to each other, but historically, and kvass was much broader than this only version that now exists on the market. And that's actually the coolest thing about kvass, that it can be very different depending on how you make it. It can feel like I guess it's practically the same in this way as the beer. So it can be, it can feel like a super sour drink, a fermented soda, sometimes even closer to liquid food. So kvass can change a lot because it isn't just one fixed recipe. It varies depending on things like base ingredients. It can be bread, molten grain, fruit, beet, anything. Of course, sugar levels, fermentation, timings and temperature, strength and sweetness, flavorings like herbs, berries, raisins, mint, spices, like everything. So you can experiment a lot with the drink, and kvass is just, kind of a framework rather than just a single style of this drink. Another thing about kvass, which is also remarkable, that it was not, invented. It evolved naturally because it solved everyday problems right from ancient times, and I will tell more about it. And by the way, also funny thing about the meaning of kvass. So Slavic root kvass, in Russian, it's called, there is a verb kvasit, which literally means ferment, to ferment things. So kvass was defined by process, not ingredients already with its name. Okay, yeah, let's go. Where kvass comes from. That's an interesting story because basically fermentation itself was like emerged independently in many parts of the world. I don't know, China, Mesopotamia, Egypt, but fermentation, but especially was deeply rooted in Eastern Europe and in the Baltic region. And there were a few, I would say, very obvious reasons for this. First, it's harsh winters. In much of Eastern Europe, fresh food was only available seasonally, so people needed reliable ways to preserve food and to keep it in a good condition. And fermentation was like a very obvious answer to it. Another thing was strong grain agriculture, so rye, barley, and other cereals were central to everyday diets, and fermentation offered just another way to use like these cereals. So in this environment, fermentation isn't really, like a hobby as a craft, but like a way to survive long winters and yeah. So it all started at home. I would say early kvass era is like a domestic era where people at home developed their own recipes and made their own kvass. We even have like first written mentions of kvass that appear like in medieval East Slavic sources and that dated late 10th, early 11th century. But like most remarkable about it is not like, the exact date or time, but the way how it appears, how this mentions of kvass appears in these sources. So it's mentioned without any explanation. Kvass was mentioned without any explanation, which means that everybody already at that time knew well what kvass was. So everybody somehow prepared or had it at home. So yeah, early kvass is best understood as home fermentation. It was made in households. It varied from place to place, and of course there wasn't one correct version of it. And why it was so widespread, I see two also major reasons for it. The first is drinking water wasn't always reliable. So in many pre-modern settings, drinking water wasn't I don't know, safe enough, I would say. So people preferred, had some fermented options to drink. And another thing was that kvass could be very filling and it could actually replace food at some point. So it was very uh, nutritious and it could be perceived as just another meal. So that were the main reasons. And that's how early kvass was made at home. So it was like a very simple method, bread or grain, some form of bread or grain, or beetroot or any other like food you have at home plus water. Then you let it ferment, and sometimes also some honey added on top. So very, very easy. And fermentation tended to be mixed, yeast plus lactic bacteria, and it was always often partly wild or driven by whatever was already present from previous batches. So no boil, no hops, quick and very low alcohol. And I also read that it was close to small beer culture in medieval Western Europe. So, but that's just, yeah, an assumption. And then moving to another era, moving into the 19th century, kvass becomes very visible in cities as a street drink. So it's not anymore just, a domestic production. It's bigger production and it is sold very well on streets. There were vendors selling it from barrels and tubs. And so, yeah, in sum, it was just like a very uh, uh, I don't know, as maybe Pepsi-Cola now, something that you can grab and go, like a very easy everyday drink you can grab in the street. Yeah, so sometimes it's also kind of a meal substitute for people, also because it was nutritious and very filling. And then we go to so how kvass was produced in the 19th century. Productions got bigger. So we see kind of a proto-brewing thinking. So they scaled it up, big wooden vats, big batches. They cared about sanitation. Vats were washed with boiling water because otherwise kvass was spoiled. There was also early temperature management. Fermentation often happened in cool spaces like cellars, which made the process more stable. And also there was like, this nothing wasted logic or approach. Byproducts and sentiment could still be reused and repurposed. So everything uh, was somehow used. And then the new era came, and this era also somehow affected the perception of kvass, I would say, the cultural perception of kvass, because in the 20th century, kvass got, let's say, industrialized and standardized, was put, there were like certain standards put on it. Bread-based kvass became the dominant official version, and a lot of regional variety got reduced. And visually, you get we had this, iconic street distribution of kvass, these large barrels or tanks supplying kvass across neighborhoods. And there was also a noticeable change of sweetness in the recipe. So traditional kvass was actually not that sweet, but in the Soviet period, in Soviet Union, and in Eastern Europe, kvass became noticeably sweeter because of this industrial control. Fermentation was often stopped early to keep alcohol levels low and predictable because of usage of sugar, additional sugar and syrups. And so it was all very, how to say, there was official way of doing kvass, and that's it. So there was only one official line how kvass was done, was produced. And on the one hand, we have this. Not we, but I don't know. Our parents have this memory of big kvass tanks in the streets. But on the other hand, a lot of people perceive now kvass just like that, just as this Soviet version of it, very, very sweetened, very bread-based. So that's what I mentioned right in the beginning.
Masha, can I just add something for context that I'm not sure if people are aware of? But in Soviet Union, there was a certain government program which basically defined the minimum standards and the minimum base recipe for most products, pretty much anything, not just consumables in terms of food, but manufacturing standards, etc. There was just literally a minimum quality level for everything that was made in Soviet Union. That was called a GOST, and that meant that people were seeking out products that have that stamp. It was like a little stamp, with the numbers and with the wording, and that drove the perception that if I'm buying something with that standard on, it is a quality product and how it should be. But that did mean that things became homogenized and variety wasn't, really present anymore. So you effectively drank kind of the same kvass on, on the east side of Russia and Soviet Union as you did on the west side.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's prevalent to an extent now, even though it's no longer official, but there are some products that are still marketed as having that quality mark from the olden days in Soviet Union.
Yeah. And the kvass that is produced nowadays, it's very, very close to that version of kvass that was used in Soviet Union. So also very sweetened and bread-based.
I
Yeah,
have a
and
quick question. You talk about bread-based kvass, and you mentioned it was made with bread. Is that a process you're going to talk about later? Or
uh,
what do you mean by making kvass with bread? Is it just throwing water on bread, or how does that work?
I'm gonna tell about it later.
Oh, later. Okay. Ignore me then. Okay, thank you.
yeah, so we'll talk about technology a bit later. The only question that is left for me is beer kind of a kvass or not? I would say historically, beer and kvass share very like a common ancestor, right? So great grain water, short fermentation. So the the process used to be the same at some point, but then they like beer and kvass evolved towards different goals. And kvass stayed more about like, daily life, low alcohol, quick, so often mixed fermentation. So, and yeah, a purpose close to hydration, nutrition, and something like this. And I would say it's still stayed in a more, I mean, people sometimes prepare it at homes, so maybe it's there's less regulation around it, less like industrialization around it. But of course, Soviet history is another story. Yeah, so beer isn't kvass, but kvass makes a lot of sense to brewers because it's a parallel fermentation path shaped by different meats. So it's also like a total story when you have, the products and you can experiment with them and get a very different result out of it. So it's never two same kvasses when you brew them. And that's something Dasha will talk about. Over to you, Dasha.
Thank you. I saw Paul's question in the chat, and I think maybe Masha will answer it after the whole presentation, if it's all right, Masha, with you.
I cannot see the question, sorry. Yeah.
It's in the chat.
I will check it after, maybe not to mess up with the presentation because I need to.
Oh, yeah, okay. So yes, before actually talking about technology and kvass, I wanted to talk about the moment, the time we all live in. And maybe you noticed that over the past few years, we've seen a very clear shift in how people consume alcohol and how they relate to drinks. Alcohol is no longer the default choice, especially for younger consumers, Gen Z and younger millennials. They are drinking less and they won't drink something alternative that feels both social and meaningful. And at the same time, there is growing interest in fermentation, gut health, probiotics, even if people don't use these exact words. And people want drinks to do something with their health and maybe mental health as well, not just taste sweet and refreshing. And in that context, kvass suddenly doesn't feel like a nostalgic relic from the past. It starts to look like a very modern answer. And you can switch the slide. So the question that I became obsessed with a couple of months ago was very simple. Can we find through experimentation a recipe for a modern, healthy, and stable kvass, a real product for today? Next slide. So I decided to start like many people in the most obvious way. I just went to YouTube and I found plenty of Soviet kvass recipes that were made with bread. And I bought store-bought bread, baker's yeast, sugar, and how you make kvass with bread. You basically use bread instead of malt, and you mash it. So in the beginning, you put it in the oven in order like you cut it, you put it in the oven and you dry it for the color, and then when you pour water inside this like bread, it gives you this brown kvass color. And it is like the recipe that people used a lot in villages and our when I made it, it was tasty, it was comforting, it was quite familiar, but I wanted to go deeper into authenticity. Next slide. So I started a rye sourdough starter. I baked bread with it and then made kvass using that bread and the live start itself. So basically I made kvass with flour and water and sugar, and I was quite proud of myself at that point because flavor was really good and it was like deep and real, but also it turned out to be completely unstable. Every batch was different, and at that point it became obvious that I was making a purely domestic product. Apparently sourdough is a dead end for a scalable product, because rye sourdough is an extremely complex ecosystem and it contains dozens of strains of bacteria and yeast. Its behavior changes with temperature, flour, water, feeding schedule, and even season. So that's what makes it beautiful for bread, but also that's what makes it impossible for a consistent beverage product. And we wanted to make a consistent beverage product. And with sourdough, you can't fully control acidity, you can't reliably control alcohol, you can't reproduce the same microbiological profile twice. And the most important thing, you can't definitely pass regulatory and production checks. At that moment, something clicked in me, and I realized that I had solved the flavor problem, but I hadn't solved yet stability problem. And I started working with barley malt, rye malt, and small amount of specialty malt. Actually, I forgot to say in the last. I forgot to say that you need to use rye bread. Maybe Masha said it. You need to use rye bread in order to get kvass. So when I switched to malt, I started to use rye malt. And I think you can switch the slide. Yes. Yes, I made a decision to move away from sourdough entirely and to switch to commercial brewing yeast. It was a psychological shift in a way as much as a technical one, because I stopped thinking like someone just cooking in the kitchen and started thinking like someone actually developing a product. Yes, yes, she is. Next slide. And also to speed up learning, I also changed my process, because before that I was using batches, like I had 2 batches of 5 liters each, and then I switched to small 1.5 liter batches, and I had 6 of them because I wanted to try different malts with different yeasts and different combinations. And I chose 2 favorites. First one, it was like yes, I think it was barley based with Nottingham ale, and also I liked Philly sour because it gave like a nice kombucha style aftertaste. But next slide. To achieve stability, I also started measuring everything: original gravity, final gravity, pH, temperature, time, and this is where I had a bit of a shock, because again, as I said, we wanted to make a healthy product, and it turned out that I have 1.5 to 2% of alcohol in the kvass, which is not healthy according to British law, and we needed to change it somehow. And I didn't know how to solve this problem. Yes, so we started looking for a solution. We found experts, reached out to technologists and people with production experience, and we found 2 main directions. So first one was that we actually need to use low and no alcohol yeast and not just average beer yeast. And second thing, that we needed to use lactic acid fermentation. Of course, I use Philly sour, but it's a bit different because I mean, it's important to remember something fundamental, that historically kvass is not just fermented drink, it's actually lactic fermented, and acidity is really central for this drink. Alcohol is quite secondary, and this reframing changed everything. Next slide, I'm going to talk a bit more about Philly sour, because as I said, I already experimented with Philly sour yeast, which produces lactic acid and alcohol at the same time. And maybe some of you remember last time I brought to the Christmas meeting, I brought 2 kvasses, and the first one was made with Nottingham ale, and second one was made with Philly sour yeast, and you actually could taste this like acidity in it. It was expressive, aromatic, quite beautiful, but it's also still was difficult to control because everything was happening all at once. More acidity often meant more alcohol and more esters. Less sweetness can push the drink into like wine territory. So the key insight was to separate the processes. First, develop acidity, and then very gently shape texture and aroma with yeast. This separation allows real control over pH, over alcohol, and over the final sensory profile. So we decided that we're going to do it like two-step fermentation, lactic fermentation first, and then low alcohol yeast. Grain choice as well turned out to be critical because, as I said, I used rye malt because this is how you do it. And rye really gives kvass its soul, its breadiness, depth, and unmistakable character. But rye is also rich in beta-glucans. It creates viscosity, filtration issues, and instability, especially under cold storage and pasteurization. Barley, on the other hand, is enzymatically stable, predictable, and production-friendly. So the solution wasn't to abandon the rye completely, but to redefine its role, barley as a structural base and rye as an accent. That balance keeps the drink recognizably kvass while making it scalable. Next slide. But unfortunately, this is where we meet reality. The cultures and ingredients we need, like the cultures, low alcohol yeast, are rarely available. Maybe you will show me the way, but I couldn't find it, honestly. They're rarely available in retail level. They exist, but mostly in B2B and production contexts. So our next step is to work with a brewery or co-baker to test the process at production scale and to compare it directly with what we achieved using Philly Sour. So yeah, the story to be continued. And finally, next slide, I wanted to zoom out again. Kvass today doesn't sit neatly in one category because it's like not beer, it's not kombucha, it's not just a soft drink. It lives somewhere between grain fermentation, low alcohol culture, and functional beverages. And that's exactly its strength, in my opinion, because of how, again, Soviet Union standardized kvass. We started to think that this is the only like way this drink could exist, but actually, like beer, it has great potential to be different. And yeah, for me, kvass is not about going backwards. It's about rediscovering a fermentation language that still has a lot to say. This is it.
That's great. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think the room is full of questions.
That was great. That was really interesting. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'd like the journey from not knowing anything about it to basically doing R&D for a commercial product. Nice to see. So are you after like a specific ABV and pH for your?
Yes. So ABV. Yeah, we want ABV to be. Yeah. Sorry. What?
The Philly Sour's not sour enough, did you say?
It's not that it's not sour enough. The problem is that you can't control alcohol and acidity when you do it only because if it's only Philly Sour, they depends on each other. If you brew it longer, it becomes more sour, but also like alcohol grows. And if you brew it less, if you brew it only like for one day, then it's not that sour, but you win because you have a low percent of alcohol. Yeah, so that's the problem. This is why we wanted to divide these two steps. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, we will try it, and maybe I will decide that Philly Sour is better. But again, the problem is that we can't go higher than 0.5% of alcohol because it becomes an alcoholic drink, and we don't want it.
Yeah, and then if you pasteurize it, it's no longer probiotic and actually loses part of its appeal.
Yes, this is also true. And unfortunately, we've been thinking a lot about it. And unfortunately, we decided to pasteurize it because there is a kvass actually in Scotland. It's called kvass. And the guy who is doing it, he he's doing it with sourdough starter, and he doesn't pasteurize it, so it's like real kvass. But his business is not doing great because it's just so hard to distribute a drink that has only like 3 weeks of life, and it can live only like in the fridge. So we decided that we're going to pasteurize it, but then maybe we will add prebiotics and like different bacteria, live bacteria that can survive in room temperature. It's not ideal, but this is what most kombucha producers do. Yeah. Maybe one day we will make non-pasteurized kvass, but for now, non-pasteurized kvass available only to my friends who can come to my kitchen and try it straight away.
Yeah, I've never come across kvass and unpasteurized version being sold commercially before. Everything you're always able to buy, at least throughout my childhood to when I would visit my folks,
Yes.
it's always pasteurized and thus not very appealing to me, at least.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But
So
maybe
is
that's the premium product. Yeah,
Sorry.
maybe you buy something off the shelf that's pasteurized, and then there's a premium version that comes in time, which is not pasteurized, and then you're paying for the immediacy and the short shelf life of it.
Yes, I think, of course, if we had a choice, we would make it non-pasteurized, but we are doing it because we want to build something, we want to earn money, we want this business to grow, and we feel that it's the right decision to start with non-pasteurized version. But then maybe for the sake of image of the company, maybe we will have like a line of non-pasteurized products as well. But right now it's just too difficult for us.
So do you actually mash the grain then at sort of 60 degrees to get
Actually,
starch out, or
I started with mashing it on 65 degrees as beer, but then I learned that in order to keep alcohol as low as possible, you need to mash it on a high temperature. So now I'm mashing it at 70, 72 degrees, somewhere around there. Yeah. For like 30 minutes approximately. I put it in the oven. And yes, this is the process.
While
and
you're
that
talking, I think Peter's just shared a link. I was thinking about what they call maltose negative yeast. So when you make wort, probably about 75% of the sugars are maltose. And
Yes.
beer yeast ferments maltose, but wine yeast doesn't. But you do, and there's a lot of new yeasts out there that don't ferment maltose. So it's only the smaller sugars that get eaten, and you can make a lot of really sweet, low alcohol beers like that. And I also think you can mash higher than 72. Ken will tell you you can even go up to 78.
Oh, really?
I believe you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mash at 80 when I'm doing my
Okay.
low alcohol beers. Yeah.
Okay, I will try it
as
because
well.
I read somewhere that more than 75 is like not working that great, but okay, I'm gonna try it.
And
Yeah, there's always some enzymatic reactions that happen. So basically the idea is to mash it as hot and as short as possible, so like 80 degrees for 15 minutes.
Okay. Okay.
Because you don't want it to
Yeah.
keep on chewing through stuff. You just want to get it out and get it onto the boil before it can sort of before it becomes too efficient. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay, thank you. I'll try it
I
next
want to
time.
get in, just not to speak from experience, but from listening to a talk just at Beer Boards recently by Alex at Lalamand, and she specializes in low alcohol beers.
Mm.
Interestingly, what she said was that she recommends mashing at 77 centigrade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then at the end, to lower the pH down below 4. The reason using hydrochloric acid. The reason for doing that, said, is the low pH plus carbonation will prevent E. coli, bacteria, and salmonella, and it's an alternative to pasteurization.
Mm.
Is that helpful?
Yeah. So to keep pH below 4, you said, or
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, with Phyllis sour, it's impossible to keep it higher than 4.
And the other thought was that the yeast she recommended was what was it? Just here a minute. For commercial brewers, it's low no yeast. It's one of their new ones, which is low no alcohol yeast. If you can't get hold of that, to use, I've written down Windsor yeast.
Windsor.
Yeah.
Yeah, home brewers are not to be sold the low no alcohol yeast. You can't get it because
Really?
yeah, it's only for sale to professionals who have got like health and safety standards and things like that. Basically, they're terrified that somebody will get hold of this yeast and poison people and come back to them. So yeah, I've tried to get it, and I've even asked our sort of homebrew suppliers if they can get me some, and I've been told they won't even sell it to us. So yeah, if you do manage to get hold of some, it will be through the back channels.
Okay. This is the problem, because I wanted to, like, my idea was to brew everything myself at home, and then with a recipe I'm certain about, go to the brewery. But it turned out that I can't buy both lactic acid. It's just like I couldn't find it anywhere, and I couldn't find non-alcoholic yeast as well. So probably what we will do is we will just find a brewery or co-baker, and maybe they will order them for us.
So with the souring, are you doing like we do, like when you're brewing a sour beer, you do a kettle souring. So you put some lacto in it and leave it at 40 degrees, 45 degrees for a couple of days.
Yes. So I mean, I've never done it myself because again, I stopped at the point where I just made it with Philly sour. But the whole idea is to put lactic acid in the how you call it, in the in the kvass, and then yes, keep it on the low temperature for a couple of days, and then you add yeast.
Yeah.
So probably I would avoid Philly sour because it's a bit unpredictable. You don't know if it's actually fermenting or souring. I'd probably I was thinking there's two known lactobacillus. One is Delbrueckii and
Could you write them down, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll put them in the chat. So Rebus will sour it to like a pH of 3.5. Delbrueckii is not so sour, and that's probably what you want. And it's often difficult to get Delbrueckii below a pH of 4. So maybe pH 4 is probably what you're looking for. I'll try and write this while I'm talking.
Yeah.
But
I think like I prefer something maybe a bit lower, like 3.6, 0.8, but yeah, I'm open to
but let's open this kind of worms.
It's always your cult.
It's the pH is not always related to how sour the drink tastes. You have to consider pH versus titratable acidity. And when you go below 4, the pH as a measure, at least from sour beer making, becomes a lot less important than how it is perceived. So I would probably look into that, into measuring a titratable acidity of a kvass that you like, and then aiming for that instead of a specific pH. Because as your recipe changes, pH, even if you keep the same pH, you will feel different level of acidity.
Okay. Thank you.
But the pH you're going for is going to be way below food safe anyway, isn't it? So food safe is like 4.6, isn't it? And you're going 3.6, so that's not going to be an issue, is it, for you?
Yeah, Joe's writing Yakult as a lactose source. Yes, I actually use Yakult as a lactose source for starting sour fermentations.
Oh, yeah.
It's cheaper than buying lacto yeast. I can get a pack of Yakult for a couple of pounds, and a packet of lactobacillus is like 16 quid.
Or as you leave it, it takes about 2 days to sour. So if you take a pH measurement every few hours, and then as soon as it's at the level you want, then you boil it, and it's fixed.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter which lacto you use. You can just end up with the pH you want. The
Yeah,
trick is to get the pH relative to the balance of sweetness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I never knew about this thing, Yakult. I'm gonna look into it. Thank you.
Yeah, and the advantage here is you're not using any hops, so there is nothing really to fight the lacto, because many lacto strains are hop intolerant, and nearly all of them. So here you don't have to deal with that problem, which is kind of a bonus.
Yeah, it's interesting whether you can use Yakult like on a bigger scale production, or
Probably not, but you could probably isolate. Like many years ago now, too many even. I did an experiment, but basically, where can I source a reliable lactobacillus culture? And I effectively trialed several brands of kefir, several brands of yogurt, Yakult, etc. And Yakult is just consistently the same, and also I quite like the slight pineapple-ish flavor profile.
Okay. Thank you.
I think I used Actimel when I did my kettle sour. It's similar, just in a bigger packet, isn't it?
Yeah,
somebody said it tasted of yogurt though.
yeah, it has that slight yogurt to it, but I don't know about where Actimel sourced the bacteria, but Yakult, it's like Lactobacillus shirota, because Shirota was the name of a scientist who isolated Lactobacillus in Japan from his own gut, and then basically made Yakult into a commercial product from bacteria from his own gut.
Okay, interesting.
So that's another route potentially.
Yes.
Cannibalism.
Yeah, it's probably not vegan at that point.
I mean, even if I'm able to do the first step of fermentation, like lacto acid fermentation, then I still don't have available non-alcoholic yeast, but probably I can do it just with normal yeasts.
But have you thought about not doing yeast fermentation at all? Especially if you're using a clean yeast, it probably adds nothing or little flavor-wise. And then if you develop your flavor from your malt or from your bread or from your additions, and then have a pure lacto fermentation. Yeah, because not all there are some lactobacillus that also produce tiny amounts of alcohol, right? So you could probably end up. I will link to a page which tells you everything you need to know at this stage about most lacto strains available to homebrewers.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, you might just do a lacto fermentation only.
Okay, yeah, I think it will be interesting to try anyway, and then I'll see how it tastes, how it goes.
So if we wanted to do a rye bread based kvass, what would we do as home brewers?
Yeah, I want to have a go.
Yeah.
How much bread, how much water, etc.
Oh, so again, if you want to use bread, you just buy rye bread from the shop, or you can make a sourdough starter, rice starter, and make a bread with it. And in my opinion, it's fancier, and I like the taste more than with store-bought bread. But you can do it also with just rye malt, depending on like which result you want to achieve, because with rye malt it tastes a bit closer to beer. With bread it tastes a bit closer to what we used to drink in the childhood, but you don't know the taste anyway, so
well, I think some people, they probably don't remember, but around about 2018 or maybe even 2019, I actually came back from Russia, and there was a meeting very early on, and I did bring probably like 4 liters of kvass, but I'm not sure if anybody here was at that meeting or remembers it even. And all I remember is people found it weird.
Really? Was it like Soviet bread kind of
No,
kvass?
it wasn't. So obviously, I'm very familiar with the Soviet style of kvass, the one that we've been talking about, and the one you're trying to make, in some sense, right? But the one that close to my heart, and the one that I actually like, is the spontaneous fermentation breaded one, where you
Mm.
use instead of bread, usually stale bread as you would, but instead of that, you use birch juice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is full of sugars. Right as the snow starts to melt, and just before the birches start budding, you tap into the tree, and it's so sweet. And then you use that as your basis for spontaneous fermentation with a bit of burnt toasted rye and barley, or one or the other, or a mix.
Ooh.
Then you leave it for 3 to 4 to 5 months. You effectively do this, call it end of March, early April, and then you drink it, mid-summer. And quite often you have to break through the pellicle, usually in big vats or etc. You have to break through the pellicle to drink it. So that's the one I like. It's the breaded one, but it's very
Okay.
far from what you're making.
I probably I need to try it. I never even heard of it.
Is
Yeah,
that
it's
still
it's like,
is that
sorry,
still
Jack?
0.5? Is that still 0.5%?
I have no idea. But it's something that nobody questions, because like kids drink it, and you can't get drunk on it because sure, birch juice is sweet, but it probably, I don't know, maybe it has like gravity of 10, 12, 10, 15 at most. So you're not going to get more than like 1.5% there. But there's enough souring from natural fermentation that it doesn't spoil. Although sometimes it does. When with natural inoculation, it's a bit of a game. You can have two containers, two vats side by side. One is fine, and the other one is just not fermenting.
So back to the recipe.
So yeah, back to the recipe again. Which recipe do you want? Was bread or was rye? Or was
If you're
malt?
doing it with bread,
Bread. Okay,
just go and
so
buy a loaf.
are you gonna make your own bread? Or are you gonna just buy it in a?
I'd probably buy bread. My bread comes
Okay.
out terrible.
Okay, then we are buying bread and sugar, and also it's like our grandmothers, they like to use izum.
Raisins.
That's raisins.
Raisins, yes, exactly. Because it somehow helps with fermentation. Yeah. I honestly don't know how, but it like contains sugars and
It's not so much about the sugars. It's basically has bread and yeast in it, which is extremely well preserved because of the high sugar content. So it's the natural yeast that occur on grapes
Oh,
that
okay.
that are preserved, in the raisin as it is dried. That's the main reason.
Okay. Thank you. Because I always wanted to Google it, but I never did. Yeah, and you buy bread and you cut it into like 1 centimeters pieces, and then you put it in the oven for, I don't know, 10, 20 minutes, depending on the temperature, but you want it you want like a golden crust to appear, but not to burn it too much. And depending on how you will burn it, like the color of the kvass depends on how you will burn it. Because if you burn it like really, really dark, then the kvass will be dark and probably bitter. And if you will burn it just slightly, the kvass will have this like nice golden color, and it's just like the question of your preferences. Yeah, preferences. And then yes, you just pour water. 65 degrees is fine, maybe 70 degrees, and you keep it like this for hour, maybe 2 hours. And then like you basically do the mash, and then you um clean the water out of bread, and you don't boil it because with kvass you never boil it after mashing. You just cool it down, add sugar, cool it down, and then you add yeast. And for the simplest Soviet version, you can just add bread yeast like normal ones, but also I like adding like Nottingham ale or something like this. And you keep it for, I think, like maybe 36 hours, 48 hours, again, depending on the taste you want to achieve. And voila, it's done.
Yeah.
So if you're doing if you're using a 5 litre demijohn, would that be like a loaf of bread and half
Yeah,
litres
I
of
think it's
water, or?
like, yeah, it's I mean, I last time I made it with bread, it was like a lot of months ago, but I think it's approximately like a loaf of bread. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you see, we made it completely differently.
Really?
Yeah.
How have you
So,
made it?
so first thing I will probably mention is in terms of which bread to use. I mean, yes, you really want high rye content in the bread. But if you're using bread with preservatives, you're probably not going to get much in terms of fermentation because that might, stop the yeast from acting. So you really want bread that has, just the normal ingredients of with nothing added into it. And another advantage is bread that has a lot of preservatives. Um, you know how it is, 2 weeks old, it's still a bit soft, but it's starting to go moldy. Whereas sourdough and those breads, they usually just dry up. It's rare to find a sourdough that is completely stale, but it's starting to mold. So baking it in the oven is actually a way to make sure that any mold spores are killed because that could affect your fermentation. What we would do is up to this point the same process, but then we wouldn't actually draw the water from the bread. It would stay there for the entirety of fermentation. And what you would add into it would be a spoon of creme fraiche or a spoon of sourdough starter or whatever thing you have. I've actually never seen yeast being added ever at all. And then what you end up at the bottom is this kind of like shrub. Yeah, and once you're happy with how the fermentation is going, your kvass is stable flavor-wise, you then, when you make a new batch, you use the shrub to inoculate the next batch, and you just keep going and going and going and going. And you usually effectively have a Solera, of some sense. You run it for as long as. Sometimes it goes bad, just like Soleras do, and then you start another one.
Yes, I know this recipe, and when I was like searching for the recipes on the YouTube, I found this like way of making kvass using this like bread mash in other batches, but I can't remember why, but I decided not to do it, probably because I knew that if I want to do it on a bigger scale, it's like
Obviously
it's
not
only
applicable.
it's only for homes.
Yeah, and as any sourdough culture in that kind of environment, it will continue getting more and more and more and more sour. So each
Yeah.
batch a little bit more sour.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, maybe again for the sake of the experiment, I can do it just for myself at home.
Can I just ask how much water that was for the loaf of bread that you're talking about? Is that like 5 litres in a demijohn? Or?
I mean, I used 5 liters jars, and maybe in order to fill it up, but when bread is inside, you just add, I don't know, approximately 3.5 liters of water, and then if you separate bread and water, you just add more water, and if you leave bread inside, you just leave it as it is.
Okay.
You guys are going completely against the whole ethos of kvass, and you don't measure things, yeah? Don't think about it. Just chuck some bread and see what happens.
I can't ask my
This is
grandmother.
true.
Well, you can ask me, and I can ask my grandmother.
So it's just a
Every
rough idea
grandmother
of
have different recipes.
Yeah. I would say if you're talking visually, yeah, just from memory, like whatever jar you're using, it would be about 20% full of bread at the bottom. give or take.
Yeah, I think in the presentation, I don't know if you've noticed, I had a picture of my 5-liter jar filled with water and bread, and when you like in the beginning you have this amount of bread, and then you pour in liquid, and the bread just like starts to grow in the jar, and depending on the bread, but sometimes I just had the full jar of bread. Yeah.
Yeah, breaking it up helps as well. And then when you pour it, the fermented drink off, you just use a little like muslin cloth to just filter through. And then it just stays there. And then sometimes it's too lazy, so you don't even wash it. You just literally chuck in some more bread and chuck in some more water, and it goes on.
I mean, like Serge said, kvass is a homemade drink, and we're trying to make it not homemade drink. So we are trying maybe to make like a kvass-based drink. Sometimes I prefer not to say that it's the exact kvass, because every Russian person, every Eastern European person has their own like image of what kvass is. So we're just making something kvass-based.
So at what temperature do you ferment? Warm.
Depending on the yeast. If I ferment with, I don't know, I like to ferment with Nottingham ale. I like the taste of it. I'm not going to use it again because it gives too much alcohol, but just for myself, I like adding it, and I ferment on just 22 degrees. With Philly sour, I ferment on 28 probably degrees. Close. I have a heating belt, and in the beginning I was trying to ferment them both simultaneously, and I used 25 degrees temperature, but it was too high for Nottingham ale and too low for Philly sour. So now I try to divide these fermentations.
Okay, but if it's bread yeast, it's about 30, right?
With bread yeast, yeah, I would say so. Again, it's kvass, so you don't measure it.
All right, this is not the ethos of kvass, yeah.
I don't know, Jacques. I think from a bread yeast perspective, I would say 30 is too high. Because when you're making bread, you wouldn't ferment your dough at 30.
Yeah, just like
usually 26.
Summer room temperature.
I would say 25 or below.
Okay.
Or thereabouts. The bread makers here would be able to advise better.
Yeah, my wife makes bread, and the sourdough starter is usually 26, they recommend.
There you go, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but then you have to take into account your water temperature and your flour temperature. And there are very specific calculations from a bread making perspective as to what your final dough temperature is for fermentation. So sometimes anyway, but you know what I mean.
I can't remember if you carbonated it or not when you brought it in, Dasha.
Oh, yes, I put it on priming, so I carbonate it, but with Nottingham ale, I have 100% success. It's carbonized really good. With Philly sour, I think only once I managed to carbonize it, and normally it's like unsuccessful, but I decided that it's not a problem because, again, if we're gonna find a brewer, we're just gonna carbonize it, not with sugar, but with CO2 straight away. Yeah.
And is it quite low carb or high or medium?
I mean, it depends, because I think if it's a grandma kvass, it's normally low on carbonation, and if it's a store-bought kvass, then it's like Coca-Cola, it's quite carbonized. But me personally, I don't like this kvass because, again, it tastes like cola and not like real kvass.
Yeah, and not many grandmas have a CO2 cylinder.
Yes, exactly. You know, there are these machines where you pour water, like for homes, you pour water in, and then you get sparkling water from the machine. Yeah, so I was thinking maybe to buy it for my class and carbonize it in the machine.
Those, if you try and carbonate anything that's not water, it just goes everywhere.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I won't do it.
I've actually been using my soda stream recently for flushing me hops before I seal them. But that blows hop dust everywhere.
Yeah, it does. It goes everywhere.
So to follow on Joe's other question, the new recipe, how much rye malt do you use and how much barley?
If I remembered it, I can look it up. Just give me a second. I have it here. So last time I brewed it, I used so I made two types of kvass, one with rye malt base and with Nottingham ale, and another one with Vienna malt base and Philly sour. The one with rye malt, for the 5 liters, I used 300 grams of rye malt, 120 grams of Vienna malt. I used 70 grams of red X, 50 grams of Cara Amber, and 20 grams of Carafa 2. And I used the same molds, but in different proportions for the Philly sour kvass. So it was Vienna malt 280 grams, rye malt 120 grams, red X 50 grams, Cara Amber 50 grams, and Carafa 2 I used 14 grams. It turned out like a bit lighter. And for the rye batch, I used 150 grams of sugar, and also I added burnt sugar water. So I burned sugar 60 grams approximately, and I added 200 milliliters of water. And for the Philly sour batch, I used 80 grams of sugar, and I didn't add burnt sugar water at all. So yeah, this is it.
So that malt bill is giving you the different depth of flavor and the color as well.
Yes, yes.
So,
yeah, different sugars first of all, because again, rye base and barley base, and different sugars, different color, different taste. So the one with Philly sour probably mostly is because of yeast, not because of the molds, but still this like second batch was more like kombucha, I would say, not even like beer. Yeah, but I quite liked it.
So what sort of aromas do you get from the modern version?
Do you know this thing? I will translate it. Give me a second. Probably you call it as well. Uzvar. Do you know uzvar? No. Serge, could you please explain what uzvar is if you know?
I don't actually know what that is. I'm waiting
okay.
to hear myself. Let me Google just in case I do know what it is.
So if I know it's right, so uzvar is basically
oh right.
yeah. Then you explain it.
So it's a reduction, in a sense.
Yeah.
That's the way I know it. Is if it's ultimately you take something and then you reduce it down, like a sauce reduction or honey reduction or port reduction, etc.
It's basically like compote, compote like it's like compote, but not with fresh fruits, but with dried fruits. So you add dried.
So then what I'm thinking about completely.
Yeah. It's
different parts of Russia have different
yeah.
words for different things, or same words but for different things.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, this is basically a compote with dry fruits, and it gives this aroma of a dry fruit compote. You can actually feel raisins there as well, and it's interesting because in the first batch sometimes I add raisins. For the second batch I never added them, but it gives more raisins to me than the first one.
It's just that rye tends to give you, in beer at least, it tends to give you a spiciness. And I wondered whether you get spicy coming through, but you were saying it's more the fruit flavors of the other additions.
Yeah. I mean it's fruit flavors, but again, I think it's more because of Philly sour than because of rye. I don't know about spiciness honestly, but I never done kvass without rye, so I wouldn't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But something to note, obviously, yes, it's made from rye bread, but rye bread is not made from rye malt directly. Rye malt is milled, mixed with water, and left to ferment for a while, then quite often completely dried out, effectively remilled, and only then used in bread making, which does change the flavor and which maybe possibly get rid of that slight spiciness, which I wouldn't describe rye bread as spicy myself, but people might disagree.
Well, we can buy. I'm in Australia, and we can buy from the supermarket rye bread that's sourdough, proper sourdough, not artificial sourdough. And to me, it does have that slight spiciness to it.
That's right. And the sour.
It may be related. Perhaps it's all intermixed with the souring and the base grain and stuff.
So, Peter, if I think that you have the same rye sourdough as we have here in the UK, it is not made with fermented rye flour and has a completely different taste to the bread that we're talking about here that is made with fermented rye flour. It's like completely different product, almost.
Right. Okay.
Do you remember, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe last year, we all brewed a rye beer, and there were various different versions of it, sour ones and malty ones and blah, 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 blah. And we tried to identify what was the defining character of rye. And I think in the end, we came up with it, as I think Masha said earlier, it's the viscosity. It's like it gives the body to it rather than anything else. Because for the life of us, I think we were all in that room, there's like 20 or 30 of us, and no one could work out whether it was spicy or whether it was earthy or whether it had any particular flavor or not. And we tried, God, what, I don't know, 8, 10 something different rye beers. Everyone had made something different, and I don't, as far as I could remember, no one came out any the wiser.
Yeah, and Stephen, that's mostly because everybody used the same kind of rye malt. If you look at the Baltic brewing tradition, and when they make their rye beers, they don't make it with rye malt, they make it with fermented rye flour, which is then what gives it a massively bready element. Actually, I have a recipe from Pohjala. I think it's Pohjala, one of the Estonian breweries. I really like their rye beer, and they just shared a full recipe. And actually, I think there is no rye there whatsoever except for the rye flour, but you would never be able to tell because it tastes so bready.
Interesting.
Yeah, in the shops, you often see it sold as solid. I'll put it in the chat.
Solid, yeah.
Yeah, that's what people use to make the rye bread, in Russia.
But solid isn't solid just a Russian word for mold?
It is, but also it is a word for fermented rye flour.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Because you get different rye flour. I think the one you get here is really finely grained. My wife's Polish, and she brings back rye flour, which is what she calls raw rye flour. Is that the same thing that you use in Russia?
I don't think so. I don't know. Give me a second. I'll get it out of the cupboard. I'll show you the color.
Okay. It's probably going to be meaningless. I don't know. So if I took rye bread and made a homemade sourdough rye bread and made crust for that would probably be closer to the original product or the sort of more traditional product.
I mean, I think so. I might be wrong, but I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tasty. If you want, at some point I can drink sourdough kvass to the meeting made with sourdough bread, because I'm not doing it now because, again, it's hard to put it on a larger scale, but just for myself and for you, I can do it again because yeah, it's interesting to remember that taste because I remember when I made it, I really liked it.
Yeah, so guys, you can see this is the rye flour I'm talking about. It's extremely fine. It's very, very, very dark brown because it's been effectively fermented and roasted and whatever else.
Okay, that's not the same thing though. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't manage to buy it anywhere in the UK, so I actually did end up ordering it from Estonia because that was the closest.
Wow. And you're brewing with that. That's
Yeah.
for the.
Yeah, my beer for the rye brew ended up messed up for a reason of using the wrong yeast and then aging it. But I will rebrew and bring it at some point, hopefully in the next couple of months, because I really want to share the flavor of the beer more than anything.
Yeah. And that's the flour then. So that's the bread, dried, wetted, ground up.
Yeah.
Is that what
And
you're
if you look at pictures of sort of like Russian traditional rye bread, it's almost like black. We actually even call it black bread. Don't call it rye bread. It's just black bread. It's just bread.
Nice. Thanks.
Right. Any more questions presentation-wise?
I think I had one about the Soviet standardization of the state recipe. Did they just commercialize it to basically make the money out of what people were?
These days, yes, but then no. It was like Soviets were really, really. How do I put it? To them, it was really important to have standards and quality, and these recipes were developed. So let's say, for example, you're selling a sausage, right? It's stipulated that, let's call it, at least 90% of the sausage must be meat. It can't be just filler, etc. So these are the kind of guidelines and principles it had.
Is there a reason they made it sweeter? Just because did it make it more palatable? Therefore, you could sell more of it rather than grandma's version. Something.
That's a good theory.
Maybe it appeals to children.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because I don't know how old you guys are, but I remember the early 90s rather well. And then you're walking with your parents in the park, and there's this, exactly as was on the pictures, there's this barrel, and there's usually a woman selling kvass. And early 90s, you still could get some stations where you share one glass. So she fills it up, sells it, gives it to you, drink it, you pass it back, and she fills it up for the next person.
Nice.
Very sustainable.
As well.
So, sorry. Talking about regulations, I don't remember any taxes or something that were imposed in order to somehow control kvass production, because it was never, I would say, alcoholic drink, and I guess sometimes it was even closer to food, and that's why government was not that obsessed with kvass production. So yeah.
Got it. No, makes sense.
I've got one last question probably for Masha is in Lithuania I had a presentation last month and they call it gira, and I think in other Eastern European is it exactly the same thing, because I'm told it's back sweetened kvass is then it's gira, but then historically it used to be the same thing. Do you know the story there?
Yeah, you can say.
I mean, I guess it's the same, right?
I mean, I would say the same drink, and when I go to Lithuania, Latvia, I just drink gira as kvass. But maybe some experts would tell the difference. But for me, it's just kvass.
There is also a certain drink also in Finland, and it's also called, I don't remember how it's called, but a person from Finland told us about it, and it's also very, very popular, and this is used in schools. But yeah, just another name, same recipe, I would say, more or less.
Okay.
Well, guys, thank you very much. I think that deserves a round of applause from all of us.
That's brilliant.
Thanks.
That
That's really interesting.
and I absolutely love the Q&A. And kind of this is why these presentations are so key, that we get a really good discussion going about all sorts of things.
Thank you to you, because without you, I wouldn't be able to answer all those questions.
Thank you so much.
Guys, I think it's time for a little break. I think it's grab another tea, drink, beverage, what have you. And yeah, then back as always for the general